Welcome everyone to video 1.1, which is all about setting up and using Office 365 email. Office 365 is a whole suite of products which covers a bunch of things like email and calendaring and other things, and those are out of scope. So we're strictly talking about just the email part, and because we're using the web browser, it's called webmail. So what we're going to cover is we're going to cover some simple topics like using a signature in your email. We're going to talk about how you write in a more formal corporate sense, which is using paragraphs instead of just a quick, box of text that you might use if you're just writing an email to a friend, which is more informal. And then using some simple tools like spell check that makes sure that you don't have errors in your email. Again, when you're writing an email in a corporate sense, you want to make sure that you check spelling and that the grammar is correct and that you're using the proper punctuation, things like that. And then we're going to cover a small example of an email that you're going to send to your manager and a few back and forth email sessions so that we can kind of see what some professional looking emails and communications look like. So as far as the different roles you'll be playing, you'll be logging in as your actual Transcend email. So for example, if your name is Jim Swanson, you'll be logging in as jim.swanson as Transcend email. For this particular exercise, I'm going to be using someone called Ted Trainee. So that's my email. And then we're also going to be playing the role of the employee. So the employee is simply trainee XX. So XX is a variable that's whatever your student number is. So in my case, I'm student 01 also. And in other examples further on, we'll also pull in a customer, an external customer. So that customer will be customer.traineeXX. So for example, in our case, customer.trainee01. Now you've already been using a certain student number throughout the Accenture curriculum and other things, so you already know what your trainee number is, so just make sure you use that one. I'm just using trainee 01 because that's what I use to make all these recordings. So with that said, let's get started. So the first thing we got to do is we need to log into webmail as the manager, and then we'll use a different browser and we'll log in as the trainee. So first thing I'm going to do is launch Chrome. I'm going to go to portal.office.com, and as you can see, it autofills because I've already been here. Most likely you've already been here also because you've already been using your Transcend emails. So let's go ahead and go to portal.office.com. It's already typed in here, but if you wanted to, you could have use another account and typed it in. So mine is ted.trainee@transcendit-mn.org. And you always want to just double check ted.trainee@transcendit-mn.org. Next, I'm going to put in my password. And I'm going to sign in. Okay, so now I'm into Office 365. You can see I've got Mail, I've got OneDrive, I can use some different Microsoft Office products over here. But all this doesn't really matter because we're only talking about webmail right now, so I'm just going to go into Mail. Okay, so right now, because it's the first time I'm using this, it's prompting me to save my time zone. Now this is really important because when you send an email, you want to make sure that you're reflecting the proper time zone. So obviously in Minnesota, we're in the central time zone. If you're in New York or something like that, you're going to be in the eastern time zone, or California, you're going to be in the western time zone. So you want to make sure you pick the proper time zone. So we're going to scroll over and pick Central Time, which is right here. So you want to pick Central Time, US and Canada. And we're going to hit save. and then it's going to open my inbox. So this will basically get me into my email, and now every email that I send will have the proper timestamp. Timestamp is just literally saying the time that it will show that the email came in on will reflect my time zone, because obviously on the East Coast they're an hour ahead, and on the West Coast they're 2 hours behind from Minnesota. So we just want to make sure that the time doesn't get messed up when you send emails, because that would confuse people. So this focused inbox is a feature that Office 365 uses by default. Some people do like it. I personally don't like it. So we're going to actually disable that, because it is a little confusing, because you have this other inbox and you have a focused inbox. And I personally just like to have one inbox so that it's easier and simpler. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to filter, and we're going to unclick this box that says show focused inbox. As you can see, I just have a single inbox now. Now I don't have any emails. I can look and see if I've sent emails. I don't. So literally this is a brand new user, doesn't have any emails, which will be potentially what it would look like if you were just starting a new project or a new contract with a customer. So we're logged in, and now we're going to log in with a different browser. So we're going to use Firefox. And if we go back to our scenario, so we just logged in here as the manager, so now we're going to log in as the employee. So again, I'm going to go to portal.office.com, and again, it's already typed it in, so I'm going to just hit enter. So here it already signed me in as trainee01 because I was already signed in, but I'm going to go ahead and log out just to go through the process again. So it signed me out, so I'm going to go ahead and just type in portal.office.com again. And so you can see it's got the trainee01, but I'm just going to assume that I hadn't typed this in before, just to start off from scratch. So I'm going to hit sign in. I'm going to type in trainee01@transcendit-mn.org. I'm going to hit next. And the reason it has the password is because I hadn't saved it before, but I'm just going to type it in again. And I'm going to hit sign in. So now I'm signed in as trainee01, and I can, just like the other user, I can click mail, and it's going to take me to my webmail. And here we can see we actually do have an email that was in here from some testing that one of our trainers had done. So that was just this one test. Again, we see that we have the focused inbox, which has an other inbox that has certain emails that were during testing, and then has this focused inbox that essentially Office 365 tries to figure out if there are certain emails that are more important than others, which will go into your focused inbox. But honestly, I just don't see what the value is of having Office 365 trying to guess what your important emails are. I'd rather just uncheck the focused inbox and have just a very simple inbox that we can just have everything in. So now we've got everything in our inbox right here. Just got one inbox to look at, super simple. So at this point we're both logged in. We've got our trainee, which again, to go back to the diagram, this is trainee01, and that's because I happen to be trainee01. You're going to log in as your trainee number, and then Ted is my user, that's the manager, so that'll be your normal email. So we're just going to do just those two for now in this simple scenario, but later on in other videos we'll be using a customer also. So with that said, let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is we want to organize this inbox a little bit, because there's all kinds of random test emails. So with a corporate email, you generally don't want to just randomly delete things if you're not sure what they are. So you came in here, you're seeing that there's all kinds of test emails in here from Teresa Preston, and they look like things related to tickets or something of that nature. So instead of just deleting them, what I would do is I would just create a simple folder. So if you go under inbox and if you click on the folder, if you just click on this little plus box, you can create a folder, and we'll just call it tickets for now. And that's just a way to organize yourself. So we're gonna now just move everything that was in here that was just sort of, in here from before. We didn't really know exactly what it was, but we want to keep it just so we can follow up later if we need to. And here's a little trick. So instead of just, moving one at a time into here like that, like instead of just left click and dragging one at a time like this, you can click on it. If you hold the shift key, you can hit the down arrow and it will automatically highlight a bunch of stuff. So I can basically just hit the down arrow and it'll highlight everything. And then I can just move it all at once into my tickets folder. So now you can see in tickets, I have all of those random emails that were in there from before that I wasn't exactly sure what they were, but I can see that it's a ticket of some sort because it says that right here. It's from Zendesk, which was a ticketing system we'll be using later. So just so we don't have all kinds of unorganized stuff going on, you always want to have folders and kind of keep track of what's in there so that it's easy to organize yourself. So now our inbox is nice and clean and we can move on. So one of the first things we want to do is we want to go ahead and set up a signature, and that's because if you don't set up a signature, no one knows any details about you. When they get an email, it just shows up with some text in the email, but it doesn't have any information like, what your phone number is or your address of your office or anything of that nature. So a signature is just kind of a nice professional thing to do. So I'm going to click on this little settings icon right here, and we're going to scroll down and we're going to click on mail. So once we do that, then we get to all the different mail settings. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to find where our signature is, which is under general. No, where was that now? Oh, there it is, email signature under layout. So as you can see, I've used this a lot, but it doesn't mean that you have to actually memorize everything. You just have to kind of look around and find it. A lot of things in IT are also just about finding it. You don't have to memorize everything and know where everything is. So email signature, I'll click on that. And I personally do like to include my signature on new messages. I also like to have my signature on messages that I forward. So I'm going to check both of those. So I like to just have something as simple as thanks. And then now obviously my name is Trainee01, which isn't necessarily a normal name, but in this exercise I'm just going to say, okay, my name is actually Trainee01, and I'm going to say my company name, so I'm going to say Transcend IT, and then I'm going to have my address so that if I send an email to a customer or someone else, they know, some basic information about me. So I'm going to say 550 Vandalia Street, Suite 302. Which, by the way, if you're doing this in a real project, you may not actually know your address. I know that sounds weird, but you might have GPS'd it with the name or whatever. So a common thing that you do is you end up going to the company's website. So I'm just kind of going through the motions of what I would normally do. So I'm going to say, oh, well, you know what, let me just type Transcend IT. I just started a Transcend IT. What is the actual address? So generally, if you search, you'll come up with this side result right here for what the company's address, which is a really quick way to find it. So I'm just going to highlight it by left clicking and highlighting it, and I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it into here. So I'm gonna just do 550 Vandalia Street, comma. And capitalization is really important too. So like suite should be capitalized, suite 302, and then I'm gonna bring this part down below, St. Paul, comma, Minnesota 55114. I'm gonna put my website of transcendit-mn.org. So you can see it'll highlight everything. So if a customer ever wants to go to your website, they can just copy this when they get an email from you. So it's just something nice to see. So another common thing you'll see phone. So in this case, we don't necessarily have a particular phone number because this is a fictitious user called trainee01, but you get the point. So I'm going to say 612-222-1111. Now, when you're filling this out, you can just follow along and just simply do your trainee number, so trainee04 or whatever your trainee number is, and you can just use the same information. It's just to get the practice of doing it. So that's basically it. You have now created a basic signature just so that when you send an email, it actually shows up. So we'll hit save. So let's now go back and send an email. So we're gonna go and hit the new button. So at this point, we're just gonna hit got it here. And we're gonna unclick this settings button so that it goes away, because now we can have our full screen for writing emails. So you can see it automatically has thanks, trainee01, Transcend IT, the address, the whole signature that we did, right? So that's nice. You don't have to manually type any of that in moving forward. And you know that this just looks professional. It looks like you've worked in a corporation before, and people will immediately know how to get a hold of you. So it's just something nice to do. So if we go back to our requirements, we've set up a signature. So now we're going to just send a basic email to kind of learn some formal writing. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to write an email to our manager. So if we go and look, our manager, in my case, is going to be ted.trainee. In your case, it's going to be your actual email. So if your name is Jim Swanson, it's going to be jim.swanson@Transcend IT, so on and so forth. So from this email, which is the trainee01, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type TED. And you can see that because we're using Office 365, which in the back end or behind the scenes uses Exchange email, which has a corporate directory in it, you can literally search the directory and it'll give you, it'll autofill basically anyone that had the name Ted in there. So we can see Ted Trainee is in here, so you don't have to manually type that name, it'll just autofill. So you can see you've got Ted Trainee in here, and we said, you know, the whole purpose of this email is to send a weekly summary to your manager, who is Ted. So I'm just going to say summary email week ending, which is a common way you write is just WE for week ending. If you want, you can also type week ending. So I'm going to say, okay, this was an email that was for the week ending the 23rd of February. So I'm going to say week ending 2/23. And you do want to have a nice subject, because your manager or anyone really is going to filter emails and quickly scan them based on the subject. So if you put just a weird subject in there, they're not going to even open your email half the time, because they're trying to prioritize. They get maybe hundreds of emails. So it's really important to write a good subject there. So we're going to say Ted, and you might say hi Ted if you want to be a little more friendly. In corporate environments, you'll generally just see Ted like that. But you know what? I'm just a friendly kind of guy, so I'm just going to say hi Ted. So we'll say something along the lines as I wanted to take some time and send you a summary of the tasks I have been working on and get some feedback on priorities. Now this sounds like a super simple thing, but it's really important to keep your manager up to speed on what you're doing, and also the manager really should give you your priorities. You shouldn't necessarily, especially as a help desk or service desk person, just come up with your own priorities, because your manager is the person that has to make sure that the tasks you're working on are the appropriate ones, and if there are too many tasks to work on, you need to let them know that, hey, I've got all these tasks, which ones are the priorities, or which ones are the most important ones. So you can say, I have completed the following tasks. I just wanted to use something as simple as, you can use dashes like that, or you can use the bullets right here. So you can use a bullet, which is an easy way of documenting. You can say completed Accenture digital literacy program, completed Accenture IT support program, started on the Transcend help desk curriculum. You can say, at this point, I have the, whoops, a little typo there. And you can see, with Office 365, if you do that, it's got the little squiggly lines. That means you've got some kind of spelling error. So you can just right click there, and you can just see that it'll suggest a bunch of stuff. So you can just click on point. I have the following open items. So open items are basically things that are still remaining to be done. So here I'm just gonna make up a few things. This is just all an example. Look through my onboarding paperwork. Sign up for the HR classes to complete onboarding. And this is because in most companies you're going to have to go through some HR training, or they'll have things like diversity training, or just things about their HR policies that has to do with conduct in the office, things of that nature. So that's basically like a very quick version of what you've done so far, and then some things that you are still working on. So now some of these things you'll see it'll do the squiggly line. There's a spelling error, so you can just basically fix it by just clicking onboarding right here. Actually, onboarding is 2 words, so. And again, like little things like, having a capital O right there doesn't make sense. You want to make sure it's consistent. So you fix that, and then generally I want to try to suggest maybe a few things to, show your manager that you've taken initiative. So you can say, I have a few thoughts around some process documents that may be helpful for new employees. I would like to get your feedback on creating a, I'm going to say, a detailed Accenture browser settings how-to document. Which may help new employees get started with their training. So this is something that is technically optional, but it's just nice to show your manager that you have some initiative. So this is just an example of something you can suggest. So you're just basically saying I have a few thoughts around some process documents that may help new employees. I'd like to get your feedback on creating a detailed Accenture browser settings how-to. By the way, you want to just put this here because you're saying this is you want to do quotes because you're saying it's a how-to document which may help new employees get started with their training. So you don't want to necessarily just say something disparaging like, hey, this Accenture browser settings that we currently got didn't always work or had issues. You'd rather just say like, hey, I'd like to write a process document that could be helpful. You want to always come at it in a positive angle. Now, if your manager asks you like, hey, did it have a lot of issues or whatever, you can just tell them like, yes, I did have some errors or whatnot, but you want to just more focus on the positive. So really, this is very simple, right? I mean, all you're just saying is, I want to take some time to send you a summary of the tasks I've been working on and get some feedback, on priorities. So you're just basically saying, I've done these things right here. I have these following things to do. And I also have this idea about doing this process document. So it's really a super basic thing, but you'd be surprised. You could also, write this same email and not sound nearly as good. So I'm going to give you an example of that too. So I'm going to send this. And now, if you look, I'll have in my sent email, which is actually really important. Like, I'm sure most of you know this, but your inbox is for emails that you receive, and then your sent items is really helpful because you can go back and see what you sent. So you've got that, and now we're going to send an email that, maybe more similar to what you would send if you were just sending it to a friend or someone informally. So I'm going to still send it to my manager, TED trainee, and I'm just going to say something like summary. And you can just say like the same thing. You can say, I worked on the Accenture curriculum and still need to do some HR things. Or you could say some HR steps. And you could just say, I could also write up a document about the browser settings to help new employees. So, I mean, technically, and by the way, this is another example of the grammar and spell check function of Office 365. So you can just right click and then it'll just automatically give you the opportunity to correct that. So, I mean, in a way, this isn't terrible, right? You're just basically saying I worked on the Accenture curriculum and still need to do some HR steps. I could also write up a document about browser settings to help new employees. Done. So, yes, you did, technically do the same thing, with both of these emails, but now let's go to the customer side and see what it looks like. So, now we're switching gears. You're now looking at it from the manager, not the customer, sorry. So you were first writing the email from the employee standpoint, and now you're looking at it from the manager standpoint. So when you go to the manager's email, you've got these two emails in here. The first one, you can see came in, and also like the time is really important. You can see it came in at 8:53. It's got a very useful subject because it says summary email week ending 2/23. You're like, oh, trainee 01 is clearly sending me a summary email for this particular week. Without even looking at it at all, you can already tell what it is. This one, which is the less detailed email, you really can't tell a whole lot except for it's a summary. So just from that alone, you can see the importance of writing a good subject. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the first email, and you can see I have my preview pane over here. This is the default view that Office 365 uses for webmail. You can see all your emails right here, and you click on it, it just opens up a preview window right here. If you want to, you can actually turn some of these settings on and off, but by default, it works this way, right? So you can see that this person is very personable. They said, hi, Ted. They're showing, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. You want to discard that. So you can see that this person has taken some time to put down the items that they've completed, and they were really detailed about it. They bulletized it. You can see, oh, cool, I can totally see that Trainee 01 has done what they're supposed to do. They did these 3 things, and they've got these following things that they need to do, and look at that. They've even put down some thoughts around some documents that they could write to be helpful and hopefully improve the process. So that's something you'll hear a lot too. Like, process is essentially like a set of steps that you do. So basically, process improvements will be ways that you can basically improve the way that you do things, right? So this person is clearly taking initiative because they're not only telling me what they did, what they need to do, but they're just letting me know that they want input on priorities and that they want to suggest things. So that's really nice. As a manager, I would love to see this. Now this email is very, very basic. It just says I worked on the Accenture curriculum and still need to do some HR steps. Okay, well, what Accenture curriculum did you do? What HR steps do you need to still take? And it said I could also write a document about the browser settings to help employees. Like, what browser settings? What employees? And what kind of document are you talking about? So now this is referred to as just a lack of context, right? Like, the manager will say, well, okay, the manager's thinking here, okay, well, I'm glad you sent a summary. You didn't even tell me a summary of what. But, they're not going to be necessarily mad that you sent this email because at least you've sent an email, because some employees won't even send them a weekly email unless they were asked. So it shows that you did it. But, there's such a drastic difference between this email, and really they're not that different, right? It's just this one, you took a little bit more time and you used things like bullets, you separated things out into paragraphs. It's just much easier to understand. And weirdly, as a manager, if these are 2 different people, I'm just going to immediately think like, wow, this person is really together. They're really committed. They're detailed. They've got a lot of initiative. This person, they're okay. They sent an email at least, but they didn't go into any detail. They're just more of a worker bee, right? This person, I see this and like, man, this person could really show some promise. They might be able to step up and do more, things of that nature. So I'm just going to reply to this email now as your manager, who's Ted. So I'm going to say, Trainee 01. I'm going to be friendly too. So I'm going to say, hi, Trainee 01. Thank you for the thoughtful summary It was very detailed and helpful. I would like to hear more about the process document that you mentioned. Talk to you soon. Tab. So I'm going to hit send. And now, if I go back to Trainee 01, I have a new email in my inbox. And you can see that this is a single thread right here. So this is referred to as a conversation. So you can see there's a little triangle right here. So if you click on it, it'll show that you sent this email initially and that Ted replied. So you can totally see the whole history of the email in one place. And it's actually really nice, the whole conversation based email, which is kind of the new way of doing it. So as the employee, I'm looking at this and the manager clearly is happy that, I put together this email. They thought it was thoughtful. They thought it was detailed. So at that point, I'm going to take this as an opportunity to go into more detail. So you didn't want to necessarily, in that first email, tell them all kinds of ideas about exactly what you're going to put into that, process improvement document. You just want to let them know that, hey, you have some thoughts around it, and just let them see, if they want to do it or not. So you want them to have some control over it too. You want them to have the ability to tell you yes or no, yes, I want to hear more, or no, I don't want you to work on that, because they might have other ideas of your priorities, right? Because again, you may not know everything that your manager they might be thinking about other projects or things that they want you to work on. So you don't want to assume that whatever you think you should be working on is what they will want you to work on. So you just want to make a suggestion like, hey, I could do this, or I have this idea. What do you think, right? So now your manager's told you, yes, I want to hear more. So you can say, hi, Ted. The main reason I want to write up a process document is we had some issues where Flash and pop-up related settings were causing issues with some of the videos, and the checklist did not seem to cover all of the steps. Since we only use Chrome and Firefox, I would like to put together a step-by-step document with screenshots that can be proactively given to any new employees. So again, we're just writing a professional sounding email. We're using 2 different paragraphs just to kind of break up our thoughts, just so it's easier to read. You could have just done this and had it all in one big blob of text, which is okay, but it is easier to read when it's just kind of broken up, because you can kind of see your thoughts, right? So you're basically saying, I want to write up a process document, and the reason I want to do it is because we had some issues with Flash and pop-up related settings, that were causing some issues with some of the videos, and the checklist did not seem to cover all the steps. And since we use Chrome and Firefox, I want to put together a step-by-step document with screenshots that can be proactively given to any new employees. And proactively is nice, right? So that's a positive attribute. You want to be proactive instead of reactive, generally, where you're seeing that there's a problem and you want to be proactive and suggest things that could improve it. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit send. And again, you can see that my signature is applied here. So I'm going to hit send. Now, interestingly, Ted does not actually have a signature because you can see it just says talk to you soon, Ted. So really we should fix that because that's not professional for the manager to not have a signature either. Which, you normally wouldn't probably see that. Most managers would have a signature. So we're going to go ahead and use the skills that we used right before this to go back into settings. And I'm going to scroll down to mail. And we now remember where our email signature is. It's under layout. We go to email signature. And again, we want to automatically include the signature on new messages. We want to include it on forwards or replies. So it's going to have something like this. Thanks, Ted Trainee. Now, obviously, like Ted Trainee, again, was not exactly a normal name. You're going to put, your actual name. So we're going to use the same exact method to figure out the address in case you didn't know. So we're going to do transcend IT, but then we may not know what the address is, so we're going to just quickly Google that. So we're going to do transcend IT. And, the reason we're doing this is just to show you that wherever your company is that you're working at, you can now look them up easily and figure out their address. Just hypothetically, let's say you were working at a company called Express Scripts, which is a local company here. You can see that they have their own website, and you can click on their website and then go to locations or maybe contact us, and you can see their address there. So we're not going to bother, but it's just to kind of show you the concept. So Transcend IT is the company you're working at, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this address. If you just select it, Control C, go back to here, paste it, and I'm going to capitalize the suite, and use a comma after the street. 550 Vandalia Street, Suite 302. I'm going to do that because it's always, the city, comma, the state, and then the zip. Again, I'm going to put in my website. And I'm going to do phone, whatever the phone number was for this person. So for your actual signature, you might as well put your actual cell phone number. So that'll actually be really helpful for emails that you actually send to internal Transcend people because, they may not actually have your phone number on hand, but if they get an email, they'll now know, oh, boom, I know what this person's phone number is. So it's actually really helpful. So we're going to hit save, and actually a really good principle is to just double check. So I'm going to just make sure, okay, I have thanks, comma, my name, the company, the address, the website, and the phone number. Great. So I'm going to hit save. And now I'm back over here. So I'm just going to click up here to get rid of the settings. So you can see I've got my email from Trainee01. It says, hi Ted, the reason I want to do this is because we had some issues. So now I'm going to reply as the manager who's Ted, and now look, I've got my signature as I should. So I'm going to say, hi Trainee01, that sounds great. Please move forward. So that's great. So the manager's now sending you an email saying, go ahead and now actually I moved over to Trainee 01's email, and you can see that the manager said move forward. So that's a very, very basic example. For some of you, you might be thinking that this was super obvious, but part of this whole training is to make sure that we don't assume anything, and simple things like using a signature and using a paragraph is actually, things that are sometimes not followed, and we want to make sure that everyone in our program is consistent and always follows these simple guidelines for how to write professional corporate types of emails. So if you have any questions on any of this, please make sure you ask your trainer. If you have certain differences you want to tweak things with, if you like to write in a slightly different way, obviously that's totally fine. That was just an example of how to write. That happens to be more of my writing style. So you can totally change if you go back to this conversation. You can see that initial email that was sent. If you wanted to, not use bullets and you wanted to use dashes instead, if you want to slightly change the way you wrote this, is totally fine. It's just an example of a way you can clearly communicate and give your manager a lot of details without having to really write a lot of words on there. This really isn't that big of an email, but it gives the manager everything they wanted to know. So it's just introducing you to those types of formal emails that you may or may not have written before. So thanks again for your time. I hope that this was informative. Again, if you have any questions, please ask your trainer. Thank you.